The diner was nearly empty when a scruffy-looking man walked in, his clothes tattered, his face weary. He hesitated before taking a seat, his eyes scanning the menu, with a mix of hunger and hesitation. The young waitress, Emma, noticed him immediately. Instead of turning away, she greeted him with a warm smile. She had no idea that this homeless man was secretly a millionaire, testing her kindness. What she did next would change her life forever, but she had no clue yet. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The small diner had a comforting warmth despite the cold wind howling outside. Emma, a young waitress with a kind heart, moved between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. The evening had been slow, just a few regulars sipping coffee and chatting in low voices. She glanced toward the door as it creaked open, and a man stepped inside. His clothes were worn and frayed, his boots covered in dust. His face, lined with exhaustion, held an uncertain expression as he scanned the room. Emma noticed how his fingers trembled slightly as he picked up the menu. His hesitation was evident, his eyes lingering on the prices longer than most customers. She had worked in this diner long enough to recognize the signs of someone struggling. While others might have ignored him or asked him to leave, she walked straight to his table, her warm smile unwavering. "Good evening, sir. Can I get you something to drink?" she asked gently. The man looked up, his tired eyes meeting hers. "Just water, please." His voice was rough, as if he had not spoken much that day. Emma nodded, disappearing for a moment before returning with a glass of water and a fresh cup of coffee. She set it down in front of him without a word about payment. He hesitated before wrapping his hands around the cup, as if savoring the warmth. He looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured. Emma simply smiled. Everyone deserves a warm cup of coffee. She stepped away to give him space, but her mind stayed on him. Something about the way he carried himself did not quite match his appearance. He did not beg, did not ask for anything, yet there was a quiet dignity in his posture. She had served many struggling customers before, but something about him felt different. The man took small sips, his fingers tapping against the table in thought. He watched Emma as she worked, observing the way she treated each customer with the same warmth and patience. There was no judgment in her actions, no hesitation in her kindness. When she returned, he hesitated before speaking. "What would you recommend?" Emma smiled. "The homemade soup is really good, and it's warm. Would you like to try it?" He glanced at the menu again, then nodded. "That sounds nice." Emma placed the order without mentioning the price. When the kitchen bell rang, she brought out the steaming bowl, setting it in front of him carefully. "Enjoy," she said softly. He took a spoonful, his eyes closing for a moment as he savored the taste. "It's good," he said, his voice quieter now. Emma watched as he ate, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. She did not know who he was or what his story might be, but helping others had always come naturally to her. What she did not realize was that every small act of kindness she had shown was being noticed. The man had not walked into the diner by chance. He was there for a reason, and Emma's life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Emma continued working, refilling coffee cups and clearing tables, but her mind kept drifting back to the man in the worn-out clothes. There was something about him that made her curious. He was polite, soft-spoken, and despite his appearance, he carried himself with quiet dignity. She had served struggling customers before, but something about him felt different. He was not just passing through. It was as if he was watching, studying everything around him. She glanced over and saw him eating slowly, as if savoring every bite. She noticed how he straightened his back whenever someone walked by, as if he was used to being observed. He caught her looking and gave a small, knowing smile. She smiled back, but a question lingered in her mind. Who was he? A few minutes later, she saw him reach into his pocket, fishing for something. Her heart sank. She had offered him the soup without mentioning the price, but what if he felt pressured to pay? She walked over just as he placed a few crumpled bills on the table. "It's on me," she said quickly, sliding the money back toward him. His hand hovered over the cash. "That's very generous of you," he said, his eyes searching hers. "Why?" Emma shrugged. "Because I can." His gaze lingered on her for a moment before he gave a small nod, folding the bills and slipping them back into his pocket. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter this time. Emma simply smiled and continued with her work. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness had just set something much bigger into motion. The man finished his meal and sat quietly for a while, watching Emma as she moved through the diner. She was not just kind to him. She greeted every customer warmly, treated each person with respect, and never lost patience, even when a man at another table snapped his fingers to get her attention. She handled everything with grace, never letting frustration show. After a while, the man stood up and walked toward the door. But before he left, he turned back one last time. "Have a good night, Emma," he said. She froze for a split second. She had never told him her name. Before she could respond, he pushed open the door and disappeared into the night. Emma stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Her stomach twisted with a strange feeling, something between curiosity and unease. Who was he? And how did he know her name? The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She tried to shake off the strange encounter, but something about it stayed with her. When she finally clocked out and stepped into the cold night air, she found herself glancing down the street, half expecting to see the mysterious man again. But the sidewalk was empty. With a sigh, she pulled her jacket tighter around herself and started walking home. She had no idea that at that very moment, the same man was sitting in a luxury hotel suite, making a phone call that would change everything. "I found her," he said into the phone. His voice was steady, certain. "She has no idea what's coming." The next morning, Emma arrived at the diner feeling a little more tired than usual. She had spent most of the night thinking about the mysterious man. There was something about the way he had looked at her, something about the way he had said her name, that made her uneasy, but she pushed the thoughts aside as she tied her apron and got to work. The morning rush was busier than usual. Regulars filled the booths, and the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. Emma moved quickly, balancing trays, refilling cups, and greeting customers with her usual warm smile. But in the back of her mind, she could not shake the feeling that something was different today. Then just before noon, everything changed. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the diner. It was not just any car. It was a luxury vehicle, the kind Emma had only ever seen in magazines. The doors opened, and a man in a sharp suit stepped out. He adjusted his tie and walked toward the entrance with an air of confidence that made people turn their heads. Emma barely had time to process what was happening before the door swung open, and the man stepped inside. The diner fell silent. Conversation stopped, forks clinked against plates, and all eyes turned to the stranger. He scanned the room before his eyes landed on Emma. A small smile played on his lips as he walked toward her. "Good morning, Emma," he said, his voice smooth and assured. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen this man before, yet he spoke her name as if he knew her. She swallowed hard, gripping the tray in her hands. I am sorry. Do I know you?" she asked, forcing herself to stay calm. The man chuckled softly. "Not yet," he said, "but I know you." The words sent a chill down her spine. The diner remained eerily quiet, the other customers pretending not to listen while stealing glances at the scene unfolding before them. Emma shifted uncomfortably. "Can I get you something?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man shook his head. "I am not here for a meal. I am here because of last night." Emma's grip tightened on the tray. "Last night?" The man nodded. "The man you served, the one in the worn-out clothes. He is not who you think he is." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had known something was off, but this was something else entirely. "Who is he?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man studied her for a moment before speaking. "You will find out soon enough," he said. "But first, he wants to see you." Emma blinked. "See me?" "Yes," the man said. "Right now." A cold wave of uncertainty washed over her. Everything inside her told her to say no, to walk away, to pretend none of this was happening. But there was also something else, an undeniable curiosity, a need to know the truth. She glanced at her boss, who stood behind the counter, watching with wide eyes. He gave a hesitant nod, silently granting her permission. Emma turned back to the man in the suit. "Where is he?" The man's smile widened just slightly. "Come with me," he said, gesturing toward the door. Emma took a deep breath. She had no idea what she was about to walk into, but one thing was certain: her life was about to change forever. Emma hesitated for a brief moment before finally stepping outside with the man in the suit. The warm afternoon sun cast long shadows on the pavement, and a slight breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. She could feel the eyes of the diner's customers watching her through the window, their curiosity mirroring the storm of emotions brewing inside her. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the sleek black car, unsure of what she was about to face. The driver, a man dressed in a black uniform, opened the back door for her. Emma glanced at the man in the suit, silently asking for reassurance, but he simply gave her a knowing look before nodding toward the car. With a deep breath, she slid into the plush leather seat. The man followed, closing the door behind him. As soon as the door shut, the noise of the outside world disappeared, replaced by an almost eerie silence. The interior smelled of rich leather and something faintly familiar, though she could not place it. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, guiding the car down the road with precision. Emma fidgeted with her fingers, stealing glances at the man beside her. He sat with perfect posture, his hands resting lightly on his lap, his expression unreadable. The tension in the air was thick, the silence stretching between them unbearably long. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice quiet yet firm. The man turned his head slightly, studying her with an amused glint in his eyes. "Patience," he said. "You will see soon." Emma frowned but said nothing more. She turned her gaze to the window, watching as familiar streets blurred past. Soon they left the downtown area and entered a part of the city she had never been to before. The buildings grew taller, more refined, the sidewalks lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and high-end boutiques. This was not a place for someone like her. This was a world of luxury, wealth, and power. The car eventually pulled into the driveway of an extravagant estate. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she took in the massive structure before her. Towering pillars framed the grand entrance, and the pristine white walls gleamed under the sunlight. A long pathway lined with elegant lanterns led to the front doors, and the garden surrounding the estate looked like something out of a magazine. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her. Emma hesitated, feeling as though she had stepped into a dream. She turned to the man in the suit who gestured for her to step out. With a deep breath, she swung her legs out and stood on the cool stone driveway. Before she could ask where they were, the large double doors of the estate swung open. Emma's eyes widened as the same man she had served at the diner, the one in the worn-out clothes, stepped out. Only now he looked completely different. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his hair neatly styled, his entire presence exuding power and authority. Gone was the tired, disheveled man she had pitied the night before. In his place stood someone who commanded attention with every step he took. "Emma," he greeted, his voice calm yet filled with something she could not quite identify. She swallowed hard. "Who are you?" she asked, barely managing to keep her voice steady. The man smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Come inside," he said. "It is time you know the truth." Emma's stomach twisted with nerves, but she forced herself to nod. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. With her heart hammering in her chest, she followed him into the estate, completely unaware that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Emma stepped into the grand estate, her breath catching as she took in the towering ceilings, the glistening chandelier, and the polished marble floors that reflected the golden glow of the afternoon sun. The air smelled of expensive cologne and fresh flowers, a stark contrast to the greasy scent of the diner where she had spent the last few years of her life. She felt out of place, like an intruder in a world she did not belong to. Yet she followed the man in the tailored suit, her heart pounding with every step. As they walked through the opulent hallway, her mind raced with questions. Who was this man really? Why had he come to the diner dressed like a homeless person? Why had he brought her here? The curiosity burned inside her, but she kept her lips pressed together, waiting for him to speak first. Finally, they entered a large sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an immaculate garden. The furniture was elegant yet inviting, the kind of space designed for quiet, meaningful conversations. The man gestured for her to sit, and she hesitated for a brief moment before lowering herself onto a plush velvet chair. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked, his voice calm, controlled. Emma shook her head. "I just want answers." The man studied her for a moment before nodding. He sat across from her, his posture relaxed, as if he had been waiting for this conversation. "My name is James Whitmore," he finally said. "I own multiple businesses, real estate, and a number of charitable organizations. But last night at the diner, I was not a millionaire. I was just a man looking for kindness." Emma felt her pulse quicken. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a rush of emotions through her. "Why?" she asked. "Why pretend to be homeless?" James leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "Because I have spent my entire life surrounded by wealth. Everywhere I go, people treat me differently because of my money. I wanted to see how someone would treat me when they had nothing to gain. And you, Emma, treated me with kindness, respect, and dignity. You did not hesitate to help me, even though you had so little yourself." Emma swallowed hard. "I was just doing what felt right." A small smile touched his lips. "And that is exactly why you are here." She frowned, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress. "I do not understand," James exhaled slowly before continuing. "I have been looking for someone like you. Someone with a good heart. Someone who deserves an opportunity. You work tirelessly, yet life has not given you the chances you deserve. I want to change that." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I want to offer you a new path," James said. "A job, an education, whatever you need to build the future you have dreamed of. No strings attached, just a chance to rise." Emma stared at him, struggling to process his words. Was this really happening? A stranger, a millionaire, was offering her a way out of the struggle she had known her entire life. It felt too good to be true. "Why me?" she whispered. James leaned back, his gaze unwavering. "Because you are the kind of person who deserves it, and because the world needs more people like you." Emma's throat tightened, emotions swirling inside her. This was the kind of moment she had only read about in stories, the kind of chance that people dreamed of but never actually received. She took a shaky breath, her mind spinning with possibilities. This was her moment, but was she ready to take it? Emma sat frozen, James's words echoing in her mind. A job, an education, a chance to build the future she had only dared to dream of. It felt unreal, like she was living someone else's story. Her entire life had been a struggle, each day a battle to survive. And now, out of nowhere, she was being offered a way out, a fresh start. But deep down, a small voice whispered, was this real? Could she trust it? She met James's gaze, searching for any sign of deception. But all she found was sincerity, a quiet certainty in his expression. Still, doubts crept in. I do not know what to say, she admitted. This is overwhelming. James nodded, as if he expected her hesitation. Take your time, Emma. This is not a decision you have to make right now. I just want you to know the offer is real. Emma looked down at her hands, her mind racing. It was not just about her. If she took this opportunity, it could change everything. Not just for herself, but for her little brother, for her mother. The endless bills, the late-night shifts, the exhaustion that never seemed to fade, it could all be behind her. But what if it was a mistake? What if it was too good to be true? James stood up and walked to a nearby table, picking up a small envelope. He returned and placed it in front of her. Inside is my personal contact information, along with something to help you get started. Emma hesitated before slowly picking up the envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers and gasped. Inside was a check with her name on it, a check for $10,000. Her heart pounded. I cannot accept this. James smiled. It is not charity, Emma. Think of it as an investment in your future. Use it however you need, to pay off bills, to get an apartment, to enroll in classes. Whatever will help you take the first step. Tears burned in Emma's eyes. No one had ever believed in her like this before. She had spent years feeling invisible, struggling in silence while the world moved on without her. And now someone, A complete stranger, just days ago, was giving her a lifeline. "But why?" she asked again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do this for me?" James sighed, his expression turning thoughtful. "Because I was once in your position. I was not born into wealth. I had nothing just like you. But someone saw something in me and gave me a chance. I never forgot that. And now I want to do the same for others." Emma swallowed hard, emotion clogging her throat. This was real. This was happening. She had spent her whole life believing that people like James Whitmore did not notice people like her, that the rich and powerful lived in a different world, untouched by struggle. But here he was, proving her wrong. She took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. "I do not know how to thank you." James smiled. "Live a life that makes you happy. That will be thanks enough." Emma nodded, determination igniting inside her. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope, and she was not going to waste it.